There is a simple movement that most men have not attempted since they were children. It takes less than 10 seconds. It requires no equipment, no gym, no appointment. And according to researchers who have studied thousands of adults over multiple decades, how a person performs this one movement is more closely linked to how long they are likely to live than almost any other simple physical marker available outside of a hospital. Most people have never heard of it. Almost no one has ever been asked to try it in a routine doctor's visit. And yet it quietly separates men who are aging well from men whose bodies are declining faster than their calendar age would suggest. The test is this. Can a person sit down on the floor and then stand back up without using their hands, knees, or any other form of support? That's it. No weights, no treadmill, no blood draw, just the ability to lower the body to the ground and rise again using nothing but legs, hips, core, and balance working together. By the end of this video, the full breakdown of what this test actually reveals about the body will be laid out, along with the specific, gradual way anyone can rebuild this ability if it is currently out of reach. Because here is the part most people do not expect. This is not a test of youth. It is a test of practice. And it can be regained at almost any age. Stay through this, because the way this ability fades is rarely sudden. It is a slow, silent process. And understanding exactly how it happens is the first step to reversing it. Why this particular movement matters. So much at first glance. Sitting on the floor and standing back up looks almost too simple to mean anything. But researchers who study aging and functional movement have long pointed to this exact task as a uniquely revealing marker, because unlike a single muscle test, it cannot be faked by strength alone. To perform it without support, a person needs several systems working in coordination at the same moment: leg strength to control the descent and push back up, hip mobility to fold the body without strain, core stability to keep the torso balanced through the transition, and a functioning sense of balance to prevent a wobble or fall at either end of the movement. This combination is exactly what tends to fade first as people become less physically active, not dramatically. Not all at once, but gradually, one small compensation at a time. A person starts using a hand to push off the ground, then a knee, then a nearby chair. Each adjustment feels minor in the moment. Over years, those small workarounds add up to a body that has quietly lost the coordinated strength it once had without anyone noticing the exact turning point. This is why researchers have found associations between performance on floor-based movement tests and broader measures of physical function and mortality risk in observational studies. It is not that the movement itself is magical. It is that the movement acts as a mirror, reflecting the state of several interconnected systems at once. Systems that, when they decline together, tend to signal a broader pattern of reduced physical resilience. The three systems being tested at once: 1. Lower body strength rising. From the floor without support places significant demand on the muscles of the thighs and hips, the same muscle groups responsible for most of the body's major movements: walking, climbing stairs, getting out of a car, recovering from a stumble. These are also among the first muscle groups to lose mass and strength when a person becomes more sedentary, particularly after the age of 50, when muscle loss tends to accelerate if it is not actively counteracted. A person who struggles to rise from the floor is often, without realizing it, also losing strength in exactly the muscles most responsible for staying independent and avoiding falls later in life. 2. Hip and ankle mobility. Long hours spent sitting, at a desk, in a car, on a couch, gradually shorten and stiffen the muscles and connective tissue around the hips. Ankle mobility often declines in a similar way, especially in men who have spent years in supportive, structured footwear that limits the ankle's natural range of motion. Both of these restrictions make the deep folding position required to sit on the floor and rise again feel awkward or impossible, even in a person with reasonably strong muscles. The stiffness, not the weakness, is often the limiting factor, and it is one of the most overlooked and most reversible parts of this entire picture. 3. Balance and coordination. Nervous system's ability to coordinate multiple muscle groups through a changing base of support is a skill, not just a strength attribute. It relies on the vestibular system, on proprioception, the body's sense of where it is in space. and on fast neuromuscular reflexes that keep a person upright during a transition. This is precisely the kind of coordination that fades quickest when it is not regularly challenged, because unlike raw strength, balance and coordination are highly use-dependent. A person can technically still have strong legs and yet lose the coordinated balance needed to move fluidly between sitting and standing, simply because that specific pattern of movement has not been practiced in years. What a struggle with this test is actually signaling. When someone finds this movement difficult, it rarely means something is broken. It almost always means one of these three systems, strength, mobility, or coordination, has quietly deconditioned from years of a more sedentary daily pattern. And because the body adapts specifically to what it repeatedly does, a life spent mostly sitting in chairs, on couches, and in cars gradually trains the body to be excellent at sitting in chairs, and increasingly poor at the more complex, ground-level movements humans are naturally built to perform. This is the part that surprises most people. It is not really about aging in the way most men assume. Age plays a role, but the far larger factor is simply disuse. Two men of the same age can show dramatically different results on this test, and the difference usually has far more to do with how each man has been moving through his daily life than with anything happening on a cellular level. That is also the encouraging part. Because if the decline is primarily driven by disuse rather than an unavoidable biological clock, then it is a decline that responds directly to renewed use. How to rebuild this ability. Starting from wherever you are, the goal is never to force the full movement immediately, especially for anyone who has not attempted anything like it in years. Instead, the ability is rebuilt gradually, in layers, allowing strength, mobility, and coordination to redevelop together, rather than forcing one system to compensate for the others. Start with supported practice. Using a sturdy chair or countertop for light support, practice slowly lowering into a squat and standing back up, focusing on control rather than speed. This begins rebuilding leg strength and coordination without demanding full unsupported balance right away. Work on hip and ankle mobility separately. A few minutes a day spent in a deep, supported squat position, even briefly, even while holding onto something stable, gradually restores the range of motion that daily sitting tends to remove. Gentle ankle circles and calf stretches complement this work. Practice the transition itself in stages. Once supported squats feel controlled, the next step is practicing the full sit-to-floor and floor-to-stand transition using one hand for light support, gradually reducing that support over time as balance and confidence improve. This staged approach lets the nervous system relearn the coordination pattern without the risk of a fall. Build consistency, not intensity. This is not a movement that improves through occasional, aggressive effort. It responds to short, frequent practice, a few minutes most days, because coordination and mobility both improve primarily through repeated, gentle exposure rather than isolated hard sessions. For most men who begin this process consistently, meaningful improvement in ease of movement tends to appear within a matter of weeks, well before full mastery of the unsupported version is reached. The body adapts to renewed demand far more readily than most people expect at nearly any age. Why this matters beyond the test itself. The real value of this movement is not the test score. It is what regaining it represents: strength, mobility, and balance working together the way they are meant to, in a pattern that directly supports the everyday actions that keep a person independent, getting up from a low chair, playing on the floor with a grandchild, recovering quickly from a stumble instead of falling. Losing the ability to do this movement rarely happens because of a single event. It happens through years of small, quiet trade-offs, choosing the chair instead of the floor, the car instead of the walk, the elevator instead of the stairs. Each choice seems irrelevant in the moment. Together, they shape how a body moves decades later. Rebuilding the ability works the same way, in reverse. Small, consistent choices, repeated often enough, quietly rebuild what years of convenience gradually took away. This video is intended for general educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Anyone with existing joint issues, recent injuries, balance concerns, or other health conditions should consult a qualified healthcare provider or physical therapist before attempting new movement patterns, and should always prioritize safety over speed of progress. The floor-to-stand movement will not diagnose a disease, and it is not a substitute for medical evaluation, but as a simple, honest snapshot of how well strength, mobility, and balance are currently working together. It offers something valuable that most routine checkups never measure, and unlike a number on a lab report, it is something anyone can start improving today, without waiting for permission.